You need to be calling your House member to tell them that you want new leadership. We're not going to get anywhere. The election will mean nothing if we don't have new leadership in the House, and it won't mean anything if we don't get rid of the 2/3 rule in the Senate. I'm just telling you straight up. I don't know about you, but I don't spend all of my time trying to bring state government kicking and screaming to its constitutional conservative limits just to have people play political games when they get to Austin. Now, everybody ran as a conservative. All of the Republicans ran as conservatives. It is up to all of us in this room to make sure that they remember that when they get down there to pass these rules and to elect the speaker.
That's right.
Okay? There is no reason that your Republican senator cannot tell you today if they will vote to get rid of this 2/3 rule. There's no reason. If they give you any kind of a wishy-washy thing, that is a red flag to you that you may not have a good session out of this senator. So I'm telling you, it's up to us to hold them accountable, because they always have some kind of an excuse. If the people of Texas had wanted the Democrats running the 84th legislative session, they would have elected them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? So it is up to us to hold them accountable. Most of them will not hold themselves accountable. That's just the way it works, folks. So now, one thing about the 2/3 rule, it doesn't apply to a special session. So if they dilly-dally around and they play the political games and they don't get the big things done, hopefully we the people can influence Governor Abbott to call a special session to get the work of the people done. You know, it is time for Texas to stop spending as much and borrowing as much and depending as much on the federal government as it does. It is also time to stop making excuses about why we don't want to protect religious rights, traditional marriage, and the pro-life issues that are going to be brought up by Texas Right to Life, the oldest and the only legitimate, and I'm saying it, the only legitimate pro-life group that doesn't sell its soul to endorse people who are not pro-life. So now the bottom line to this is that we can get up here and we can talk about all the various committees, but you need to know that the rules that the last two, I think most of you have been active the last two legislative sessions. So the rules under which the House and the Senate have worked have been those rules that the Senate passed and the House passed. Those rules that they passed, the rules of procedure, give the Lieutenant Governor additional powers beyond what is laid out in the Constitution. Same thing with the Speaker. So for example, if you had some nitwit senators who decided they wanted to limit Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, they could be conspiring in dark little halls and caves to figure out how they would do that. So I submit to you that you need to be telling them, when everything is boiled down to the bottom line, we want reform in state government. And at the end of this session, we're all going to be, the Life, Liberty, and Property Coalition will be up here and we'll be talking about some of those basic issues, the reforms that must happen this session. I mean, you know, when we have a legislative session where we have 95 Republican House members and 51% of the bills passed into law were authored by Democrats, something is wrong. And only 1% of those were vetoed by the Republican governor. We simply cannot allow our Republicans to act as if they're in the minority. And while I'm at it, let's dispense with this purple tie nonsense. That is a source of great annoyance to me. And if your state representative has decided that his or her main goal is to go down there and on Thursday look all bipartisan and touchy-feely with the other side to wear purple, excuse me, that's not what we elected them to do. Did anybody go out and work your heart out so that they could wear purple on Thursday? I don't think so. Okay. So let's get down to business here. Let me tell you that the way that things work down in the legislature is that there are predictable outcomes, and it has been that you will have some of these pompous people who've been down there for a very long time, and they're happy to rear back in their chair and say, well, you know, it's entirely predictable what the outcome. I can tell you right now what will pass and what will be pitched in committee before we ever start the session. When they say that, we the people are no longer in charge. And I submit to you that we have to start acting, not acting, but being in charge. There's a right way and a wrong way of going about that. But we've got to stop every time they walk in the room, you rush to have your picture made with them and treat them like rock gods or something. If there is something that is annoying you about state government or, an issue, stop just telling your neighbor or your husband, your wife about it, yelling at the radio and the TV. I will tell you, as a recovering elected official myself, my colleagues always, if they did not hear from the people, that was approval to them. Silence equals approval to an elected official. So if you have not, if you have not done the minimum to pick up that phone and to call your elected official, you haven't begun the fight. So we have to speak out. Just getting in a room and talking to each other doesn't do us any good. Now, death by committee. Pursuant to the rules that have been in place the last two sessions, we'll just talk about the last two sessions. If they have the same rules in place for the speaker, and we have the same speaker, conservative legislation will be killed by which committee it gets sent to, and it will be killed by the committee chairs that are appointed. That's just the way it works. Now, I'll tell you another little thing that happens between calendars and state affairs. I know I've had the experience with a calendars committee chairman who would promise the Tea Party Caucus Advisory Committee, yeah, that bill's coming out, it's coming out, it's coming out, Joanne, it's coming out. As soon as we get that bill, it is going to the floor. Yes, ma'am, it is. Here's my personal cell phone number. You can call me and ask me. Well, when it got down to it, guess what? The State Affairs Committee slowed the paperwork down so that it didn't come to the Calendars Committee, and they conspire against we the people with these kinds of games. So you need to be telling your House member, we are tired of that kind of nonsense. That's not what we elected you to do. So here's the other thing you've got to encourage your folks to do to hold leadership accountable. When leadership doesn't want to follow the rules, when you have a House member who gets up and calls a point of order, and that is a valid point of order, which we've seen happen over and over again, Tony, and the speaker overrules it just because he feels like breaking the rules, you have got to encourage your representative to get with other like-minded representatives and make noise about it. I am telling you that if everybody who goes down to Austin who says they're a conservative got together on the south steps of the Capitol and raised a little hell about what leadership was or was not doing, I think we might have a different outcome. I tell state reps all the time, stop telling me about how crooked the leadership is. Why don't you tell everybody? I got it the first time. There are a lot of people in your district who don't know about it if you don't talk about it. And there's power in numbers. I submit to you 30 or 40 House members talking about how crooked the leadership is might make a crooked man stand up a little straighter. And the same thing happens over in the Senate. I will tell you that American Laws for American Courts, I was asked by another activist to call the Lieutenant Governor and to talk about that, and that bill had been put on the intent. It had been put on intent. It was to come to the floor. Well, it got pulled down to allow another senator to be listed as author of the bill. Well, see, that did nothing but slow it down to where it never saw the light of day. And they used an excuse, well, the Jewish community doesn't like that bill. What? What, really? So I worked with Tracy, talked to Kathy Adams, Eagle Forum, talked to Tracy Bradford, who was the Eagle Forum's point person on that. And she said, Johnny, we can get Frank Gaffney, we can get all sorts of experts who will Skype in, who will call in, who will show up in person to testify about the need for American laws for American courts, that legislation to pass. And again, the sound of crickets. So I am telling you, they have made up in their minds what they want to pass and what they want to kill. And the lobby groups are very, very powerful. And it's not just the lobby groups of the engineers and the, the construction people and all that. It's also people representing special interests like CARE, the Muslim groups. I have to tell you, they're very, very powerful down there. So it's death by committee, death by calendars, death by running out the clock. So what this all means is we have to tell them that it is unacceptable for you to go down there and to cover for the status quo. It's time for Texas to get moving because the time is running out on this country. Time is running out on this country. And Texas has to be strong to lead the way. I think the voters made some very wise choices last Tuesday, but we all know they sometimes forget their promises if we let them. I submit to you, we don't let them. And I think now we have a few minutes for questions. So.